Manager here at the Forks Library as well as the Clallam Bay branch, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's Candidates Forum. One of the priorities for the library the last year and looking ahead is to partner with groups in the community so that we can better connect community resources to community needs. So it was really great when we were approached by the League of Women Voters to help sponsor this Candidates Forum, because it fits the bill on both counts. It helps all of you get some answers to the questions that I know you all have. And if there's anything this last election cycle has taught me, is that people are really passionate lately about their candidates and who they're voting for. So I hope today is an opportunity for you to get some answers. And a few housekeeping things before I turn it over to Norma with the League of Women Voters, and that is, you need to use the restrooms. They're just halfway down the hall. When you leave today, we'd really appreciate it if you use the front doors that you came in rather than this side door. And I'm actually really nervous because there's so many people here, which is totally So I'm going to stop talking, and I'll let Norma from the League of Women Voters take over and tell you a little bit about how the framework will work today and introduce the candidates.
Thank you, Teresa. The League wants to thank the library for co-sponsoring, and Teresa's probably nervous because she thinks the fire marshal might come do something. If they come, just duck, so we'll be the right number. Okay, my name is Norma Turner, and I'm going to be the moderator today. A couple of basic things to understand is that the League is a nonpartisan volunteer organization. So what nonpartisan means is that we never endorse candidates, but we do endorse issues. So you may see language that the League endorsed Initiative X or Initiative Y. And that's because they then have study groups, and they do the pros and cons, get the background. It's a very long process. Everybody votes, and they decide whether or not they'll endorse or oppose initiatives and measures, but they never get involved in candidates. I do want to point out to you on the table up here is this marvelous resource piece that you'll probably want to pick up, take home with you. The 2017 Directory of Elected Officials. Every elected official, whether you knew they were there or not, or is in here. Tells you how to contact them, address, phone numbers, who they represent, when their term ends. So I encourage you all to pick one of those up. And there's also forms up here if any of you are not registered to vote. There's voter registrations. And equally important, if you have moved since you registered, you need to file your new address for the upcoming election in order to make it all work. So the agenda today.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. There's information on the proposition up here, the juvenile justice one. There's just handouts for the juvenile justice proposition.
On the November ballot will be a 0.1% of 1% juvenile justice issue, and there's information about that. And the League has taken a position on initiative. Remind me the number? 6? Anyway, there is one. We'll find that out later. Okay, and if you have a cell phone, do us a favor and please turn it to vibrate or turn it off. Time Magazine said you can increase your happiness either by turning your social media off, and the longer it's off, the happier you'll be. Okay, so today's agenda includes, we're going to start with debate for the mayor. And you see they both have their own microphones, and that is because the radio station has kindly come and they are broadcasting live. But they will not be taking call-in questions, but your friends at home can hear the debate. This is scheduled to go from approximately 2 until 4. We're going to divide that up so that the mayor's race will be from about 2 until 2:30, unless there's lots of questions. That end time is very flexible. Then we'll take a couple-minute break while we shift candidates. Then we'll have the 2 candidates for the court, and that will take about half an hour, whatever, again, depending on how many questions there are. And then we'll conclude with the forum of 5 commissioners running for fire district, and we'll explain why there's 3 persons for 1 position when we get there. So we're going to start. The rules are going to be that each candidate will open with a 2-minute presentation. And they're theoretically, in their 2 minutes, going to try and answer these questions. What are your qualifications for the office? How do you intend to deal with the key issues confronting your area of responsibility? And what's the primary goal you hope to accomplish in the first year? Now, if they don't get all those questions answered, you can see why. 2 minutes is not very long. But once they've done their introductory statements, we will open it up for the audience. So when you ask a question, you want to hold up your sign there. You will be, 30-second one. You'll be limited to 30 seconds. Ask your question, because that's all we really want is questions. We know all of you know a lot of things, but this is not the place to share information. We're in about hearing from the candidates.
There'll be a 15-second warning.
Okay, so what you'll do is our timers are sitting here. When you're starting to talk, they'll hold up 15 seconds. It means hurry up and get your question answered. And then they'll hold up 30 seconds, which means you're out of time. So we want you to try and practice. And there's 2 ways you can ask questions. You can verbally ask them. If you're a little shy and you want to write it out, you can do that. We have some cards available. Whether you ask the question verbally or in writing, your name needs to be attached to the question. We will take verbal questions, give them the priority, and if there's time, then we'll take the written questions. So just know that ahead of time. So we're just going to, with no further ado, and welcome our 2 candidates, Ayers and Tim Fletcher, running for mayor. And on behalf of the league, we want to thank you both for running. We really believe that's the height of democracy, is to give voters a choice. So when there's 2 candidates for one office, that's a very good thing. We were going to flip a coin, but we didn't get that done. So we will. Who signed up first, registered to run?
Ken.
All right. So because Ken signed up first, we'll let him be first. So you'll have 2 minutes, and then we'll hear from Tim. Thank you.
Well, first off, thanks to everyone for coming out and listening to the debate today. I think it's great that we're all participating and actively involved in our community. The reason I'm running for mayor is after serving on the city council and looking at certain things going on, including the cost overruns in the police department and the lack of long-term budgeting, I made a decision that I wanted to do something more for the community. And to do that, I'd have to be mayor. So basically, in a nutshell, to hit the 3 key points, my qualification, I'm a retired military officer. I've worked as a civilian manager, and I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets, large organizations of people, and I think that gives me unique experience in both military and civilian side of the house. Key issues that I want to address during my first year, I think that...
They're asking you to speak up a little louder. It's hard to hear.
Okay.
Actually, that's not a microphone that amplifies. It's a microphone for the radio.
Okay, so some of the key issues that I want to get accomplished is I want to get the police department rebuilt. I want to make sure that we have something that's going to sustain itself through the future, not just year by year like we've been doing it, but I want to see a 10-year financial forecast where the police department is active and viable. I want to see the officers get raises to Clallam County entry levels because we're losing too many of them right now. They come in and they leave just as soon as they got here because they're not getting paid adequately. And then last but not least, I want to reduce overall spending in the city. And I want to return management and leadership to the city. And I see that as a real problem. Forks doesn't need a part-time mayor. We need a full-time mayor. We need someone to help guide the department heads and employees in getting things done and making sure the voters' interests are actually being addressed. And I don't think they are. So if I'm elected mayor, I'm going to make sure that we address those issues.
Thank you. Tim, you're next. We have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tim Fletcher, and I candidate for Forks Mayor. My pioneering families were leaders in this community, which gives me a deep understanding of the West End, from Queets, Clearwater, Fairholme, Nia Bay. That understanding comes with living here for more than just a few years. I have worked both in private industry and government, making me the right choice for mayor. And let me tell you about this. I have 20 years' experience in the timber industry, giving me insight into complications of managing a valuable resource. Added to that is my 20 years in network administration for the Forks Community Hospital and the Clayton Valley School District, which provides me of a deep understanding of technology needs in the region. Key issues as I see them are working with the police chief, Mike Rowley, and bringing high standards of professionalism and keen interest back into the community through the police force. We need to build a larger cadre of drug and alcohol sponsors to help support those in our town who are seeking to break their habit. Stop the revolving door. I want to arrest the drug dealers and not the person who needs help. Let's get off the supply. Our region must continue to be recognized as a leading pioneer in rural technology. Any part of our growth cycle in jobs and services must meet the needs and demand of that growth. I will work with city staff and trust in their ability to do their jobs. Constant communication, mutual trust, honest collaboration is how I will operate. Four walls do not make a mayor, but collaboration of the community and city government do make a mayor. I believe the mayor's role is oversight and not micromanagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we start the questions, we have one seat up here. Someone wants to come and grab it?
The only reason I turned it this
Yeah,
way was not to block the aisle.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so if you want to ask a question, I'd like you to just raise your hand and you'll be acknowledged, and then just stand up and project your voice so we can hear. And once you're, whoever's the first person to answer the question will restate your question for the radio audience. So, we have some questions out here?
Norma, I'm
Yes.
sorry, but could we ask if, when the candidates speak, if they would stand up?
Okay.
We have people down the hall.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hitting people.
Okay.
I had to knock people down to get in here.
Maybe people could stand along here.
Yeah.
Well,
You
we
want
don't know
the
if that'll do
candidates
with the
come over
radio.
here?
They're not, a lot of people aren't able to see or
Alright.
hear.
Okay.
Some people in the
All right,
hallway
there-
could stand here.
There's one,
Go through,
yeah.
that's good.
Okay, let's take 1 second and then see if people want to come over and stand next to the window so they can see. And then somebody want to come sit in this one seat?
And there's one right here.
Okay.
And then I think we'll hear better if they stand up and project,
Okay.
please.
Can do that. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else before we start the questions? All right. All right, question. There's another seat over here. Okay, we have a question. You had your hand up over here? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if both of you have one management success in your background that you're most proud of.
Thank you. So, Ken, you're first, and then the rules will be is they each have 1 minute each to answer the question, and then they'll be given 1 minute rebuttal time,
He's
so.
gonna get his name.
Oh, I'm sorry, right, didn't give your name. Your name, please?
Ed Losby, I'm from Forks.
All right, okay, so, Ken, you will be first this time, if you want to stand up so we can get your voice projected.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Ed.
What is the question? For the
The
radio
quest-
audience.
The question was, do I have one management experience or accomplishment that I'm most proud of? And there are a lot of accomplishments. I was a military intelligence officer, and unfortunately, the one accomplishment I'm most proud of, I can't tell you about. But the bottom line.
You'd have to kill me, right?
Thank you.
Okay, Tim?
Okay. My number one management success was, I was the plant supervisor out here in Feral Gas. And out of 250 markets, I was rated #1 in customer sales and support for 250 markets through Feral Gas. So,
The rules are you can have rebuttal each, but I don't think this is the kind of question you need to read.
Well, I guess I'd just like to, can I do just a quick follow-up? Just something that would relate to your experience that would make you a good mayor, I guess, would
Well,
be.
okay,
I'm
but we're
sorry,
gonna
but-
have other people
Yeah,
ask their
I'm sorry.
question, then you can come back and
Yep.
ask the second one. Other
Right.
questions, right here.
This is for Ken. I'd like you to explain why you
Your name,
believe.
please.
Oh, Katie Brewer. I'm the one who told you you need to get the name of the other person. Katie Brewer, of course. I would like Ken to explain why you believe the mayor's position needs essentially almost full-time attention.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do that. One of the rules are as well, the question gets asked to a specific person. Both parties get to answer, and Tim, since you're up next to be the first one to answer, would you like to answer first, or do you want?
Sure.
Okay, and then you'll get to do it.
I don't believe the mayor should be full-time in the office. I think that the community needs the mayor to be out and about. Like I said, stated before, four walls don't make the mayor. It's the oversight over the department heads. The department heads, we've hired them as employees. They have jobs to do, and we trust them to do their jobs.
Okay, Ken.
So I have the exact opposite view. Unfortunately, last year, the city did go over budget on the general fund by $32,000. We fell short $110,000 in jail revenues. And we had some pretty serious police issues. And without getting into the details, I can tell you firsthand, I've had city employees come up to me asking me to run because of the lack of leadership and the problems they experienced. A full-time mayor isn't just there to look over people's shoulders. A full-time mayor is there to make sure the job gets done, to make sure we don't go over budget, to make sure that the employees are properly supported and they know that they have someone looking out for their best interest. And that's why I wanted to be mayor, because I don't think there is full-time leadership there, and I think that's the one critical ingredient that's missing. Thank you.
So, Tim, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal or follow-up response?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Tim, you have 1 other minute?
Tim? Ken?
Ken, sorry. We'll get there. Ken, you want 1 other minute for?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna take 1 second, run this chair down there in case maybe somebody will use it at that end of the row, since it's not being used down here, and I see people are still over there. So there you are, there's the chair if anybody wants it. So, other questions? Back here? You wanna stand up and give us your name?
Front, you want it? Just
No,
open
think
door.
of
If you
that.
take that one.
Go by first. Not a problem. Okay, so my question is to Mr. Ayers. You have stated the ICN building is one of the things I requested information on as a cost-cutting option when the city went over budget. Because the city loses money every month on the ICN building. I requested information on what sales restrictions there were on the building about 5 months ago and still have not received the courtesy of a response. So I do not know if the building could be sold or not. My question to you, sir, is what happens to the businesses that are in there? Dr. Navala, as he,
Okay, you need to wrap it up, because you've
Okay,
used
I'm
30
sorry.
seconds.
I was trying to give him the information.
So what's the question
The
though?
question
My
is,
question is this a strong option for you as your cost cutting? or
okay,
is
that's
this-
fine. Okay.
Yep,
You
I
wanna
did.
repeat the question for the radio audience?
Okay, so do I consider the ICM building a strong cost-cutting option? No, I don't, and it wasn't in my brief of cost-cutting options. What you're quoting was my request to get information on the ICM building because we were over budget, and we needed to look at ways to get back under budget. So I look at it 2 different ways. If we can make money on a city property, great, let's do that. But if we're losing money, we need to make people aware of that, and we need to look at options for dealing with that property.
Okay, Tim?
The ICN building was created to bring, give a space for local businesses to come together. Gordon Gracie utilized that area for the guide services that he ran. I'm not sure where he's at now. I believe he's over across the street. But as for the rainy gamers who had a room in the back, When the guide service was in the building, the students interacted with Gordon Gracie's customers, who ranged from Microsoft corporate CEOs, and also sometimes there were movie stars that came through. But they gave them the opportunity to interact with his customers and perhaps helping them choose a path.
Ken, do you want your 1 minute rebuttal time?
No.
All right. Tim, do you want an additional minute?
No.
Thank you. Okay, questions? You want to state your name and numbers, 30 seconds.
I'm Lucy Andrews, I'm a property owner in the city of Forks. Ken, an overwhelming message that you're giving out is money, 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 money. Like if the ICN building hasn't done well this year, we need to look at it and see what our options are. Isn't the community of Forks and the Office of Mayor to look at more than money, but look at the community and the community well-being?
Absolutely.
I need to repeat the question for the radio audience.
Okay, so your question, I'm going to paraphrase it, so correct me if I'm wrong, that isn't it the responsibility of the mayor to look out for things other than money, but the well-being of the community? And that's absolutely correct. So let's think about this for a minute. The ICN building's costing us money. We do have kids in there using it for a gaming facility, which I think is good. We do have private businesses in there. But the flip side of that is we're losing money, we're competing with local commercial properties in the community. And we do have other areas we can put the kids at. It's not like somebody would toss them out in the street. And by the way, I still think we can raise the rents and make it profitable. So I'm not proposing we shut down the ICN building yet. But I certainly would appreciate the courtesy of a response from the city attorney. I believe the turnaround time for a public information request is much shorter. And yet I haven't heard from Mr. Flick on that issue.
Okay, Tim?
The ICN building was set aside at one time for the integrated community network. And that was our first foray into bringing technology into the community and has since not been utilized for that. I'd like to see it open back up for that endeavor and to bring more technology or better technology into the community. ICN was the first start of it. I'd like to see that continue on. I'd like to see the building developed for that purpose.
Okay. Ken, do you want 1 minute rebuttal time?
Nope.
Tim, do you want an extra minute?
Yep.
Okay, you guys are very energy efficient. Okay, other questions? Is there any down the hall there who want to ask a question? Excuse me. No questions down the hall? Okay, I'm going to
got
get
one
to
more.
you after everybody's had a chance to
Yeah,
ask
that's
the
fine.
first
I
question.
just got one more.
You want to stand up and give your name and members 30 seconds.
My name's Tammy Leask. So you talk a lot about, Ken, about how wonderful the Clallam County Jail is run, but they lost their accreditation until August of this year because of overcrowding. And now you're talking about wanting to contract with them, with our inmates. They already have, I think right now there are 12 people over capacity.
You
So
have
how
15
would,
seconds
okay.
to get to your question.
So how would us accrediting our jail when we already have full contacts and they're already full, how would accrediting our jail help with them already being full?
Thank you. I know that you've asked your question to Ken, but in this round, Tim gets to be the first one to answer. Is that okay with you, Tim?
Sure.
Okay, so if you want to stand up and repeat the question for the radio audience.
And the question was? Is that closing the jail? Is that
No,
what I'm
no,
understanding?
he wants to accredit the jail, but, you know, Clallam County's already full and they haven't been accredited,
Okay.
so how would
The
accrediting
way I
us make
understand
it better?
accreditation is it's not really necessary for the jail to function properly,
Correct.
okay? I definitely, as mayor, I am not about giving our services away. I said, it's important to keep the Forks jail, the court, and the attorney, and not outsource it like our 911 services is done. I think that if you give something away, it's going to be extremely, if not impossible, to get it back.
Okay, Ken?
So with the jail accreditation, that has to do with making sure we're in compliance with all rules and regulations, and it helps defend the city against liability issues. It also encourages other cities that want to send us their prisoners the knowledge that our jail and our facility is accredited along with our folks. So it is kind of a big deal. It has nothing to do with Clallam County, and I just want to correct you on one point. I have never proposed contracting out the jail with Clallam County, nor have I proposed contracting out the police department. What I have proposed are different options for reducing costs in the general fund. And out of all the options that were looked at, the one that gave us the most money was contracting out jail functions. But there was no proposal to do that. And why is that? Because first we've got to look at the jail. We've got to look at the operation, see if we can streamline it more, see if we can make it more efficient money-wise before anyone even thinks about making a decision to close it. And by the way, the mayor can't close the jail by himself. It takes the mayor and the city council to make that kind of change. So anybody who's out there saying I'm proposing to close the jail is flat out wrong. My briefing was all about giving people options, and we have different things going on out there we got to look at.
It's time.
Okay?
And so Tim, you want 1 minute rebuttal on this issue?
Sure. Yeah, definitely not about closing any or giving up any of the services from the community. Those are very important. That's what makes Forks Forks.
Ken, you have 1 minute rebuttal time. You get to finish your sentence. You had to stop in the middle of.
No, and I just want to add that with the new proposed 2018 budget, the actual amount that's proposed to run the jail is actually lower than it was this last year. So I think that's a good idea. And I think that we're looking at cost-cutting measures. So I would like to see the jail stick around and be profitable. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to see 6 jobs go away.
Other questions? There, sure, state your name and you have 30 seconds.
Bill Brogger. We have a new chief of police, and one thing that came out in the paper was he would like to look at increasing the size of the police force, and I'd like either candidate to address what they think about that.
Okay, so Ken, I believe you're up first, and remember to restate the question for the audience radio.
Could you summarize that again, Bill? I'm not sure I got the gist.
We hired a new police chief, and one thing that came out in the paper is he would like to look at increasing the size of the police
Okay,
force.
got it. So,
The question is, do you want to increase the size of the police force? Is that correct?
no, the new police chief wants to.
More an open question,
All right.
what do they think of that idea?
Just trying to figure out for the radio audience what you're answering.
For a town our size, I'm not in favor of increasing the police force at this time. What I am in favor of is increasing their pay. And what I am in favor of is increasing the collaboration with regional drug task forces, which I think is something that's been sorely missing. So if that answers the question, Bill?
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Tim?
So we have now the new police chief, which is a working police chief, so he's going to be able to backfill any shortfalls in the schedules for the other officers. I'd like to work with that police chief and look at bringing in a canine unit to help with drug enforcement. That'll add 1 more officer. And through interlocal agreements, be able to use the canine unit to support perhaps OPNET, county, and the state, and tribals, governments. So that's what I'm looking at. Number 1 issue is drugs in the community and bringing jobs in.
Ken, you want 1 minute rebuttal time?
Nope.
Tim, you want another minute? Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Okay, your name, please.
My name is Lori Jo Porter, and this is a question for both of you. What is your experience working with budgets?
Okay, and Tim, you're up first, so remember to repeat the question for the radio.
So when I was a plant manager, I worked on
Wait
it.
a second, you need to repeat the question for the radio audience.
What is my experience working with budgets?
Thank you.
Okay, so as plant manager, I was in control of the budget, and the corporation that I worked with, they were very stringent. They wanted to see black, not red, in the budget. So they kept me in a confined budget, and I did quite well at it. I turned the market around from a retrenchment market to a profitable market. That was over a course of 4 years. I was working with the public as my, or my customer base, sorry.
Ken, in 1 minute?
Working for the U.S. government, I was responsible for managing budgets in excess of $4 million, and also for the execution of those budgets, and was held accountable for any cost overruns on those budgets. So I have quite a bit of experience working with large budgets.
Tim, you want another minute?
No.
Ken, you want another minute?
No.
Okay, other questions? Yes, ma'am. Remember, give your name and take only 30 seconds.
My name's Christine Watson-Carey, and we've been talking about increasing the police force potentially and/or raising their pay potentially. How would that come about? Through cost cutting, through more taxes? How do you propose to pay potentially for more police?
Okay, and Ken, you are up first. And you're going to repeat the question.
So if we increase the police force or their salaries, which are both Tim and my proposals, how would we pay for it? Well, I don't know how we pay for an additional person, but to increase their salaries, I do have a plan on that. We're spending money right now on recurring training. We'll hire someone, they'll go to the academy, they may not even make it out of the academy before another jurisdiction swipes them and takes them, and we just lost all that money. Other times they'll come here, they'll stay a couple of months because Clallam County is going to offer them instantly $15,000 to $20,000 more. So that would be the first way to help pay for it. The other way is an efficiency of operations. Last year, I singled about $30,000 in the police budget that just wasn't being used. And it would have just disappeared because they didn't really have a need for it. So I zeroed that out, gave it to the city clerk treasurer, and she took it out of the budget. After we requested them several times to do it, and they didn't do it, but she finally did take it out. And so I hope that answers your question.
Tim?
So the addition of the K-9 unit, that would work, help pay for it through the interlocal agreements with the other government agencies. And with the training for the officers that are going out, we'd want at least a 3-year commitment for them to come back after the training. Otherwise, I would not send them out for training.
Okay. Ken, do you want a 1 minute rebuttal?
Nope.
Tim, you want another minute?
Good.
Okay, so we're drawing up to a close because we're going from here to the Port Commission. So we'll take at most 1 or 2 more questions. So any other questions? Yes, ma'am. You see, you've already asked a question? Okay, is anybody who hasn't asked a question? Okay, right here.
Hello, I'm Karen Hirsch. I was wondering what your plans are for Rod Fleck, Audrey Braxton, the heads of all the departments. What are your plans on their jobs?
So Tim, you are the first one. Please repeat that question for the radio.
What are my plans for the current employees, Audrey and Rod? Rod is very important to the community in his work with the timber issues and also the technology issues. He's always been at the table supporting Forks. He's been our voice, whether it's here in Olympia, here in Forks, or in Washington, D.C. So we pay for his travel, and it comes back with rewards. Audrey is a stickler for the budget. She follows the budget, and any shortfalls in the past have all been taken care of. As he's presented, the 2018 budget looks really good, and that's because of Audrey.
Okay, Ken, in 1 minute.
So I don't have specific plans for them. I can tell you that they're both supporting my opponent here, and I think it's because they feel threatened by some of the options that I proposed in my briefing. So do I have specific plans for them? No, I don't. What I would suggest, though, is that there needs to be changes in the way operations are done, because even though they're both great people, let's face it, we just took out a $1.9 million loan on the water tanks, and that shouldn't have happened. That should have been planned out 20 years ago with a 5% increase every year like other municipalities. So unless you start tying your infrastructure projects to a fiscal plan, you're always going to run into these problems. Additionally, our general fund reserve right now is still too low. So we're still not meeting the state standards on that. And even though I think they're great people, do I think they need a little bit more direction and leadership? Yes, I do. And that's what I'm willing to provide.
Tim, would you like 1 minute rebuttal?
Once again, the mayor's role, and as I see it, is oversight and not micromanaging. As far as looking at long-term goals, I think we're setting really good right now. We did take a loan out for our water tanks, but that's part of doing business. That would be great to have the funds to fund that project 100%, but I don't know of any city government that could.
What's your 1 minute rebuttal?
Yeah, that's simply not the case. Most cities do plan out their infrastructure projects 20 to 30 years in advance. They take out 5 to 6% of the total of the budget and put it aside and program it in for the upgrades. So I don't buy into that. I know we can do better. And incidentally, we're looking at $2 to $3 million for the sewer plant upgrades. So the question is, are we going to take out a loan for that? I don't know, but we need to look at how we're going to subsidize paying for it.
We have time to ask one more question, and then our candidates are going to give some summary comments. So do we have anybody who hasn't asked a question? Okay, go ahead.
So, isn't it true though before this?
Your name?
Oh, Lissy Andrews. Isn't it true though before this $1.9 million loan, which is I believe part of a grant or USDA grant as well? Didn't the city operate on a cash basis?
So Ken, you are up first this time. And you want to repeat the question?
The city still does operate as a cash basis city, but we're allowed to take loans for infrastructure when required. That's not the point. The point is it's poor planning and management to be able to have to do that, because if we took it out 4 to 5 or 6% per year for the last 20 years, we wouldn't be paying the 2% interest. And incidentally, the first time this was proposed, the cost of that water tank upgrade was $1.2 million. With 1.75% or something like that on the interest. So things aren't moving along the way they should, and that's the difference. We need to do better planning and better management of our money.
Tim?
I think too much surplus would be a detriment to us. We'd have to be managing a fund that is waiting for something to spend in a far-reaching future. I think that we could not have a 10-year budget or savings be spent like that. I think somebody within the city over a changing of our government would look at that as a slush fund and use it for other things.
Ken, you want a 1 minute rebuttal?
Yeah, just real quick, there's no possibility of that being used as a slush fund, because it's got to be used for water tank improvements if it's part of the water tax or the water fees that are implemented. It can't be applied to the sewer, and it can't be applied to the general fund. That's not the way city government finances work.
Tim, you want your 1 minute?
No.
Okay. We are going to now then move into conclusions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to summarize their positions, and we started with Ken, right? Last time? So we'll start with Tim this time. So you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Our region must continue to be recognized as a leader and pioneer in rural technology. As a part of a growth cycle in jobs and services, must meet these needs and demands of growth with our newest partners. I will work with my staff and trust their ability to do their jobs. Constant communication, mutual trust, and honest collaboration is how I'll operate. Four walls do not make a mayor, but collaboration of the community and the city government do make a mayor.
And Ken, your 2 minute summary?
So I'm running for mayor to make changes, because what we are doing just isn't working. And what we are doing is not protecting the citizens. So my campaign is all about involving the community and getting their inputs, just like this right now, and hopefully in town hall meetings to make those choices, not to come out and dictate the policy will be we're not going to change and we're going to keep everything because everything's just fine. Well, that's not the case. I've gone door to door from different houses and talking to people, and everybody tells me the same thing. There's too much crime, and everybody thinks there's a lack of responsibility financially. So my campaign is going to be all about putting leadership and management back into City Hall, and about making sure that we have a police department that is not only effective, but that people can trust. Thanks.
I want to give your appreciation to your candidates. And we're going to take a 3 to 4 minute break while we bring up the next candidates and remind you that
Paula Barnes, and I'm also a member of the League. So we have the 2 candidates for commissioner for the Port of Port Angeles. And as Norma explained, with the first panel for the mayor, we'll follow the same protocol. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening remarks. Following their opening remarks, your questions will be the substance of the debate. You'll have 30 seconds to pose your question. They'll have 1 minute to answer. Since we have 2 candidates on the panel, they'll each be given 1 minute for a rebuttal. If you need an index card, if it helps you to compose your question ahead of time, raise your hand and Pat will make sure that you have an index card and a pen or pencil if you need that. After your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get to all of them, and we're going to kind of follow the same guidelines and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask their first question, and then if someone has a follow-up question, we'll deal with those later. And then we'll close with the candidates making their closing remarks, also 2 minutes long. So in their opening remarks, we've asked both candidates to answer the following questions. What are your qualifications for serving as Port Commissioner? How do you intend to address the key issues confronting the port? And what's your main goal for 2018? So we're going to begin with Colleen McAleer. Please go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So my name's Colleen McAleer. I'm currently the Port Commissioner representing District 1, the SQUIM area of the county. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on and taking time out of your day to come here and listen to everyone. So my background and qualifications, I spent 10 years in the military out of college. I was a pilot and a military intelligence officer and a combat veteran, decorated combat veteran. Following that, I also spent 10 years as a commercial real estate broker, operating primarily in SQUIM, but throughout the county. And there are 2 certified commercial investment members in this county, which is the master's level designation expertise that it covers leasing and commercial sales. And I am one of them. The other is in charge of the real estate department at the port. So that's part of my qualifications. I was on port staff for 2 years, and I really understand the port operations and all the complexities. I've also been a commissioner at the port for 4 years, and I'm currently I run the Washington Business Alliance, which is a statewide business organization. How will I deal with the issues? We're going to continue to do the best management practice of following our strategic plan. We spent 2 years developing this with over 12 meetings with the public, with stakeholders and the like to develop that, and every year we update it. My primary goal is we're looking at spending $10.5 million in the next few years on the Marine Trades Industrial Park that is just behind the $50 million terminal assets that we have in Port Angeles, and I want to make sure that that's developed exactly to the specifications of what business needs so that we can expand current business and attract future business. Thank you.
Mr. Cobb.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the League for having this opportunity to both be here and in SQUIM and in Port Angeles. Well, I grew up in rural Washington, but I had family members who were in business, and they were my role models, and so it only made sense for me to go to the University of Washington, study business, which I did, graduating with a degree in finance. But at that point in time, there was a little bit of activity in Southeast Asia, and so I looked around at my military options, and I joined the Navy and I was trained for a year to be involved in the business side of the Navy as a Navy Supply Corps officer. I was assigned to an overseas base with about 4,500 military full-time, and my budget that went through my office was about equal to Clallam County's annual budget. After the Navy, I decided I need some more education, so I came back to Seattle, got a job though, and went to Seattle University at night, getting an MBA in accounting in that area over a course of about 2.5 years. Went back to banking, was recruited to go down to First Interstate Bank in Oregon, where I was a senior lender, met a lot of businesses. One asked me to go to work for them, so I did. It was a manufacturing company. We manufactured in several different countries, sold in 110 different countries, and purchased components and elements from 25 different countries. So my manufacturing background is pretty extensive. My division grew from about 4 million to 25 million in the course of 3 or 4 years, building a national distribution system. So that's my background, it's business, and the port's all about business too. And I propose to deal with those key issues in the port by using a collaborative team approach that was successful for me in business. I'd like to apply the same with both the port and with the county commissioners and other officials in our community. Primary goals for the first year, I want to provide a more diverse business development effort. Rather than put all of our eggs in one basket, we've got $8.2 million in one company in Port Angeles, and I think some of those resources should be spread around the county.
Great. All right, thank you both. We'll now take as many questions as possible from you. We're gonna try to keep it to about 30 minutes. We'll see how that works. We'll try not to cut anyone off. Remember, we'll try to give everyone an opportunity to ask at least one question before we loop back to anyone who might have more than one. If you need a card, Pat can get you a card. Be sure to state your name when you ask your question. You can address your question to one or both of the candidates, but they'll both be given the opportunity to answer. And once again, you'll have 30 seconds and they'll have 1 minute, and then 1 minute for a rebuttal if they choose. Let's see. Is there someone with the first question? Yes, sir.
Bill Brogger. As you know, the Forks economy still has a strong tie to the timber industry. And I'd like to hear both your opinions on the stand the port has taken on the arrearage issue with the Department of Natural Resources.
Okay, and we'll start with Mr. Cobb.
Yes, there's a lot of complexity with that arrearage issue. I think the new head of the DNR at the state of Washington seems to be more responsive to that, and I'd like to see that managed more consistently for supply that's maintained for mills and other wood products industries that we might be able to attract to Clallam County. So I think it's very important to have that arrearage issue make sense and be managed properly.
Thank you.
So as a port commissioner, we signed a resolution stating to the Board of Natural Resources that we felt that the arrearage issue needed to be addressed, that it was critical for our county. Department of Natural Resources in the past has been aggregating all of the harvest data rather than looking at it by county. But when you look at it by county in the last 10-year segment, we received 40% less than we were intended to receive. So each of our commissioners has an area of expertise, and we as ambassadors to the community and to state agencies have selected Commissioner Beauvais, your commissioner of this area, and she has been at every BNR meeting representing our community and our belief that it is inequitable that we have not received our fair share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like a 1 minute rebuttal?
Certainly. Yes, I think that has to be managed very closely. The new head of the DNR says she will do so, and I think we ought to encourage her to take steps to make that a reality.
Did you need another minute?
just very briefly, Commissioner Franz has not answered the question on arrearage when we have specifically asked that of her. We submitted a comment to their super review specifically about arrearage, and the choices are, I haven't decided yet, I don't have enough information, or alternatively, it might be that no, I'm not in support of it, or yes, I am, or some portion of it, but she hasn't responded. But she is not the one that makes that decision. It's the Board of Natural Resources that makes that decision, which is a 6-person body. She is one of those people, and of course, Commissioner Bill Peach also sits on that board.
Next question. If you can project, you don't necessarily.
Oh, okay. So
Just state your name
my name is Sylvia, and I live in.
and your last name.
Corzo.
Okay.
I live in Squim. Forks has been heavily dependent primarily on the lumber industry. What types of businesses would you bring to Forks if you are the port commissioner? How would you work together with Forks?
Okay, great. And Colleen, you're first.
Okay. So in the last 2 years, we have met with Forks City Council, which to my knowledge, the commission had not done previously. We are called the Port of Port Angeles, however, every single property taxpayer pays 1.7% of your taxes comes to the Port of Port Angeles. And so I have had the belief that we need to support Forks and Squim more so than just solely the focus or primary focus on Port Angeles. As far as businesses that could be supported here, we have worked with CLT companies that could augment Interfor and the existing mills. We don't need to own the infrastructure. What we want to do, though, is make sure that the timber industry is supported and that those businesses understand all the opportunities that this community can offer.
Cobb.
I think meeting with the local officials is a good thing, but I'd like to see results. And as I mentioned before, all of the money that's been spent on economic development in the last year or two has gone to Port Angeles in one company. In looking at the Fork situation and talking with people here earlier, one critical area is internet communications. And in fact, the port in a rural area can support the development of broadband internet. And I think that would be a key element for this community to be better connected. A couple things would happen. One, people who would like to live here but would like to telecommute or commute by a computer would be able to do so. So you'd attract more people to your community that can live and work wherever they want to. Number two, we need to develop high-value products, which also need the technology of internet, that can locate here. By high value, I mean things that can be sold at a premium that are relatively small in size, so that shipping is not a critical issue.
So from my opponent's statement earlier today, he said the port has invested $8.2 million in one company. That isn't, it's a mischaracterization certainly, but it's $4.7 million that we have received in federal and state grants, and those went into facilities that the port owns. And we lease them out. We've got other companies that if the CRTC didn't want to continue to lease it, have a great interest in leasing that property. As far as broadband is concerned, totally agree on that. And that's why a few months ago, the Port Commission has asked, actually for about a year, we've been asking Clallam County PUD to meet with us so that we could talk about broadband issues across the county and understand how could we partner with them so that we could ensure that there's broadband service available to Forks. And what Clallam PUD said when they gave us the presentation was that the community that had some of the lowest support was this one, Forks.
With regard to the amount of money invested in the company in question, it's Composite Recycling Technology Center, which is by the airport, Fairchild Airport. And the number that Karen Goshen, the executive director, identified as invested in that company was $8.2 million of public money. Of course, it came from different sources. There was some federal money, there was some state money, there was some opportunity fund money, and a couple $1 million from the port itself. So that's a concentration in an unproven company, which may or may not be successful. And I'd like to see a more diverse effort to invest in companies and find ways to bring jobs outside of just Port Angeles, but would be applicable in this location as well.
Next question. If there are no more questions.
I can ask.
Okay, we'll take one more from you. And
Oh,
then,
only one more?
I think so, yes. And then we'll move to closing.
Okay, so this past Thursday, Colleen, when I heard you speak, you stated that airborne and environmental control systems had hundreds of millions of dollars in government contracts. Why would they leave that business in New York to move to Port Angeles? Is this a startup company, which has just recently started up in 2016, and it only has a really small house as their business location in New York when I looked it up today?
So, yes, again, Bill Lee is the CEO of Airborne ECS, and he's got a long history as an executive with Rockwell Collins and GE Aviation Division. He has technology that Raytheon Aerospace really wants and Sierra Nevada Corporation, and he has contracts with those entities today, which are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so he was going to either continue his business out of New York with contract manufacturing occurring in Utah and Nevada, or he could move it here. His hometown is Joyce. And when I've met him over the last 4 years, I would say to him, hey man, what are you doing? You're a trader. Bring your company back to your hometown. And that's exactly what he's done now. We have made sure that all of the opportunities and the things that he needed to be successful were available here in Clallam County. So those jobs will be here now in our county instead of Utah or Nevada.
Well, I'm confident that Bill Lee has a lot of knowledge about technology. He's managed those activities in his businesses. However, I seriously doubt that he's been able to generate the intellectual capital in a short period of time, starting since 2016. And by the way, there's no record of that company being registered in the state of New York. The office in question that you see on the internet when you look up the address that's listed on the website is a small house in the Catskill Mountains, about 2 hours north of New York. It's a startup company. Nothing wrong with that. And I think it's great that he's going to come back to Joyce, but I'm seriously doubting the amount of investment that he's got in contracts already. So the other thing is the port has invested $750,000 in leasehold improvements for that operation, and they're going to be charging the princely total of $750 a month rent. Something's not quite right there.
Certainly. So, I think we all hear this is such a beautiful place to live, and just if these community leaders could get together and get out of each other's way and create some solutions instead of being negative and criticizing one another. Well, here we've got some wins. And it's just disappointing to me that we're not focused on how do we expand those wins. And so the amount of the lease that my opponent is referencing is for the first 5,000 square feet space. That is just bare space. He has spent, I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's about $400,000 to improve that facility. And as far as his prior location, again, this was an engineering shop, and he did the manufacturing elsewhere. The governor has has approved, and the Department of Commerce did a full not investigation, but a look into their business, and they provided, I think it was $218,000 to that company, because they knew it was a real winner.
Well, I think you have to back startups. I just think you need to use your money wisely when you're doing so. And make sure that the business idea makes sense, that there's a competitive advantage, and there are pieces that fit together from a business perspective, which I have. I've started and run businesses. I've helped many people do so, and I'd like to help other people in our county do the same.
All right, we'll move to the 2-minute closing statements, and we're going to reverse the order from the opening statement. So, Mr. Cobb, you will begin, and you have 2 minutes.
In closing, I'd like to look back as a port commissioner, if I have the opportunity to serve, and see a stronger, more diverse economy in our county. I'd like to see more family wage jobs, and by family wage, that means more than $20 an hour. It means something that really pays well, so that people can raise their children properly and educate them well as well. I'd like to support high technology. I think we mentioned the broadband issue here. I think it's very critical for this community. I'd like to see the waterfront optimized for marine trades. Those are good paying jobs, and I'd like to see more of them. And careful long-term planning and management of the marinas is also important, because they're an important asset for our communities going forward. In summary, I want the best possible future for Clallam County. That's why we basically are donating our time, both Colleen and I basically donate our time on this activity. And I have no other further political ambitions than to serve this position well.
So just this week, we've, I think, had 6 events, debates. And at one of them, Mr. Cobb said logs are ugly, and was talking about the need to move the log yard off of the waterfront. But my response is so that the waterfront area looked more beautiful for the tourism industry. And while I know the tourism industry is incredibly important, we need to support all industries. And from Grays Harbor coming up the coast into the Straits down to Olympia, there's one place that has commercial terminals with a deep water port, and that is at our facility there. Those terminals are worth at least $50 million, and yes, we export logs. That is the majority of the funds that the port receives. So we've got to protect that. We've got to protect the uplands that are associated with the terminal. And that's what the port's role is. Additionally, I chose to come to the port as an employee, took a pay cut then, and then I chose to go from a high-paying job as a director of business development and run for port commissioner, because I watched little kids in Sequim, and I know the situation is much worse here, but they started out as beautiful little boys and then ended up doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, and were getting in all sorts of trouble. And time after time after time, it was because the parents didn't have lucrative jobs that kept them focused and working on the things that they should be. So crime, I know, is such a critical issue across Ayers County, but especially in Forks. And the thing that fixes crime and all sorts of these problems that stem from the lack of education and the lack of jobs is the thing that we need to focus on is jobs. So that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, both of you.
Great.
Let's give a round of applause to our Thank you, all of you, for your questions. In case we forget to mention, in about a week or so on the League of Women Voters website will be a link to the video recording, I hope, of this forum and the other forums that we're holding across the county. So look for that on the League website, which is on your agenda. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene with the
Not have city council represented is because the league sends out invitations to participate. 2 things happen. If people don't respond then they don't get scheduled. Or if you are running unopposed, then you don't have a place at the table. So, I would try to talk to people down the hall. All right, I'm not in the video, okay. So what we have, and the other interesting thing to explain is that you will find on your ballot, interesting enough, 3 candidates for Fire District 5. So how did that happen? Well, because if no one signs up for a position, under state law, they open that position up for a few days to give someone an opportunity to sign up. The state law says whoever signs up in that special sign-up period will be on the ballot. So there was no primary for Commissioner District 5. So that's why you have a very unusual setting of 3 people running for one position. Historically, you think there's a primary and there's never more than 2. So,
You're saying District 5, you really mean Position 5?
position 5, I'm sorry. Thank you. So that's to explain those 2 little pieces. Because when we set this up, there were going to be 5 people. We modified the rules a little, just minor. You will still get to ask your questions, and they will each be given 1 minute to answer, but there'll be no rebuttal because it was too difficult to have answers plus rebuttals for 5 people. So they will just each be answering your questions. So we're going to start with the standard way of having each person is going to introduce themselves with a 2-minute introductory statement. We'll then open up to questions, and they will each be given 1 minute to respond. Again, if you ask a question of one of them in particular, all 3 of them can respond. So we will start with, let's see, I have Dustin as number 1. And so Dustin is for position number 1, right?
Correct.
And his opponent, we had told us she would attend, but something must have happened and she's not here. So Dustin is the only one that is up for position 1. So Dustin, you can start, and then we'll move right up the table and have Tony and then Neris. Okay.
Okay. All right. Do I have to pick this
Oh,
up?
no.
Oh,
He
please
said
do.
you could just leave it on the table.
Perfect, we'll just, okay.
And now there's no people down the hall, so hopefully.
Okay, everyone can see me.
People down, there are a lot of, before we start, there are a lot of seats up front here, if any of you want to come up to make it easier to hear. Okay, go ahead, Dustin.
Okay, so, name's Dustin Kraft, I'm from the community here, and to start off with answering some of your guys' questions. We're moving into questions correct, by the way. Are we moving right into the questions?
No, you're giving yourself a 2-minute introduction as to why you're running, what your qualifications are, what you hope to do in the office.
Perfect. All right,
Okay.
so, anyways, Dustin Kraft. I will be finishing my bachelor's degree in paramedicine and with an emphasis in emergency services management within the next year. I've sat as a board of director, as a business officer with Forks Ambulances, Ray Ellis Memorial Volunteer Ambulance Corps. During my time of doing that over the past year, I've been working on tax preparation for the ambulance corps, reviewing spending, keeping books, and doing PR media representation. I think that we have a couple of issues that are on our departments right now. Especially with the worry of the Cascadia earthquake that could happen. We have buildings that are not structurally sound. We need to evaluate the possibilities of fixing immediate issues and possibly looking at outbuildings for equipment for that day when it comes to keep separate and out of those buildings that aren't structurally sound, since we do not have the monies right now to build a new station and to avoid, a tax increase. Also, we are looking at vehicle replacements, and I think that we need to put into the budget for next year something on that, and I think we need to look at funds that are not being utilized to be able to place that into the budget. I would really like to get financial stipends for our volunteers. I think that'd be really important. I think it would help with retention. The day and age has changed. I think this will aid in, like I said, the retention, recruitment, and training attendance of the volunteers. And I plan on accomplishing this by once again evaluating the budget for underutilized funds and looking into community, state, and government grant programs for rural systems.
Okay, thank you. Tony, you're next.
Okay. I'm Tony Romberg, Anthony, but everybody calls me Tony. I've been a fireman with District 1 just about 39 years, so been there a while. I'm actually a sitting commissioner right at the moment for the interim between the election and a vacated position. I'm the operator of Premium Shingle Company, which I've had for about 35, 36 years. I sat on the board of directors for the Cedar Shake and Shingle Bureau for 16 years, which it managed like a $3 million annual budget. I guess that's about my qualifications. How do I intend to deal with key issues confronting the district? We've got, I think through fiscal responsibility, we have to kind of keep some money saved aside and keep putting it for the equipment as it ages. I think we still have quite a bit of good equipment that could be updated that we can do within our budget. I don't think we have to get too crazy with engines. It really, we can make what we have work really good. But I still think we have to be fiscally responsible so we have the funds available to replace what becomes aged and needs to be replaced. But our district is not a wealthy district, and boy, now that I'm learning as a commissioner, it's pretty tight. So we're going to have to be really responsible. And I'd say probably my primary goal for the first year would probably be getting our tenders retrofitted, our older tenders retrofitted with new pumps that I feel probably would be a little bit more reliable, and getting the water source at Beaver with our Beaver division. When we lost Interfor, we lost the only hydrant in our area. So we're drafting all our water right now, and that's why I want the tenders updated. But we're right in the middle right now of putting in a system that I want to get that finished, so it'll be at the fire hall.
Thank you. Okay, Neris, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Neris Biciunas. First of all, that name's Lithuanian. My family's heritage is from there. I was born in Chicago and did most of my growing up in Bellingham, Washington. So I've been in Forks for about 5 years. I know that doesn't make me a local, but I'm from the Pacific Northwest. And I've been here for about 5 years working for Rainier as a forester. I've been working as a professional forester for almost since 1998. I graduated from the University of Washington, and I've been working along the coast here in various places as a forester. So that's a little bit of my background. A big part of what I feel is a strength in terms of my qualifications is, as a forester here, I am the first incident commander or the first response for any wildland fire. So I understand it's not nearly the same as a structure fire, but I do have a significant amount of experience with a fire in a wildland setting, and in that context, we do have a lot of urban-wildland interface, and that's going to be an issue. It was during the Forks fire, and it will be again, unfortunately. It's just a matter of time. So, big issues: equipment replacement. It's always a big expense, and you have two choices: take a loan out or start saving up ahead of time. We have to make that decision. I tend to lean towards saving up ahead of time to make the purchase with cash. My goal for the first year, again, this is my first elected office, this is my first foray into structural firefighting. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. I also believe that asking questions is a huge strength in terms of looking at things from a fresh perspective. You're doing this. Why have you always done that? That doesn't make any sense. Can you please explain it? Just asking a lot of questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now take questions with the same basic ground rules. You ask your question, give your name, and you have 30 seconds, and each of the members up here will be answering.
I've got one. So this is a long-range shot, but Forks EMS is different than most of the rest of the country, probably 99% of it, in that EMS is all by itself with the hospital district. Across the country is with for the fire service, structural fire service. So they're separate, but in the past 2 years.
Okay, what is your question? 'Cause you're
Okay,
down
my
15
question, my
seconds.
question is, should we look at a long-term, down the road, putting the ambulance and fire together in an efficiency of resources delivered?
Thank you. Okay, and we will go in the same order and then we'll mix it up as we go along. So we'll first have Dustin and then Tony and then there's 1 minute each to answer that question.
Okay, so the question stated was, down the road, should we, or could we possibly look at combining the EMS and the fire systems in our community? My stance on that is I think the way we do business right now works very well. The hospital is in a good financial spot with their ambulance service, and I know that from sitting on the board. I think the fire district also does very well with what they do. There's always room for improvement on both sides. I think we could work better together. I think we could integrate because we're all here for one cause. And I think possibly getting some of those firefighters trained up to our level, as well as us getting trained up to their level with rescue, I think we could do great things. So that's kind of where I stand on it, working better together with still keeping the systems running how they're running.
Okay, and Tony, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I'd like to concur with Dustin on that. We've worked with the ambulance crew as separate entities for as long as I've been on the department. And we really haven't run into any issues that I can think of not working together as separate entities. I would like to see a couple trained EMTs on the fire department, mainly for our own crew. Right now, funding-wise, I can't really see, unless we integrated, ambulances and those kind of things at the fire station. I mean, the station would have to grow. I mean, there's a lot of challenges. Not to say if we have to, we have to. But at this time, I think what we have is working.
Okay, Neris?
So, short term, I can imagine communication, improving communication and coordinating that, to coordinate the response to deal well together at an incident is an easy win. Like these guys have already said, talking about building a bigger shed to put all the equipment in and all the vehicles, I don't see that happening in the near term. If like you said, if that's a long-term plan that has to happen, that's fine. It can be worked towards. So communication and, I forgot my other point. I'm sorry.
It doesn't get any better.
Communication.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Monica Kraft. So kind of going along with his question. So in other communities and stuff, that they are combined. But are we sustainable for something like that?
Okay, and so to start this round, we're going to have Neris answer first, and then we'll go backwards down the line.
Are we sustainable in that regard? So the question is it functional long-term to operate out of 2 separate buildings, 2 separate overheads? Having said that, overhead was my second. It's an easy place to look for an opportunity for efficiencies. It is effective right now. Okay? Can it be improved? Absolutely. A big part of my professional experience in professional forestry has been process improvement. If you've heard of lean, it's a way of thinking and a set of tools about evaluating any given process, whether it's EMS or planting trees. Taking those tools and applying it towards, does everybody need to be in the same building? Are we using the right overhead structure? Is our communication structure working? These are things that we can look at, that I will be looking at. I will be asking a lot of questions. That's my advice.
Okay, Tony, you're next.
Yeah, I don't know if I could answer that intelligently when I don't know what the budget of the ambulance is. The combined budgets, I don't know what it is, so I can't really say, but right now, I do know the budget of the fire district, and expanding facilities to accommodate that, it's not in the budget right now. combined budget, maybe it could be, but like I said, I really can't speak intelligently to that without knowing what the budget of the ambulance is.
So moving on with this question and trying to come up with an answer for it. I don't think that it would really change much if they were combined, because there's a levy for EMS, there's funds that are coming in, tax-based funds for the fire department. You combine those, you're still getting those funds, it just might be coming into one pool or over one head now. It doesn't really change the way things are done. But I do know it would cost an awful lot of money for the department to be able to fund for rigs, fund for vehicles, fund for employees at that time, or volunteers, or whatever they would do for EMS personnel. The hospital right now runs the ambulance, and they have been in the black. We've been doing very well, and the levy that comes in helps sustain that as well and subsidize. And I don't see that being able to be let go of, and especially on the hospital board side, because it really helps our hospital and it sustains our hospital having the EMS. It does bring money in, and the hospital's in the red in a lot of places, and it would definitely be hurtful to the community in the end.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
In Dustin's opening...
And your name is?
Oh, I'm sorry, my name is Chris Ayers of Forks. In Dustin's opening statement, he mentioned a stipend being provided for the volunteers, and I wanted to know what monies would you use for that? And you also mentioned in that statement underutilized funds, and I wanted to know what they originally were designated for.
Because everybody gets to answer every question, we're going to want to stay with the order, and eventually we'll get to Dustin, even though you addressed the question to him. So we'll start with Tony. It's your turn to be number one.
And the question is?
Should there be a stipend? If so, what would you do?
I wrestle with that, to be honest with you. I've been a volunteer for, well, April will be 39 years. And actually it was discussed just recently, and I don't know that we could offer enough for it to make a difference, but then, you know, maybe sometimes a token of a stipend it would keep some of the younger guys that come, that we go to the expense of training, and then they move on. You know, maybe if you could show them some appreciation through a stipend, maybe it would be beneficial there. I haven't been a proponent of it to this point, but after the last meeting we had, I have an open mind about it, because whatever it takes to maintain good quality, well-trained people, I'm up for it. But I struggle, to be honest with you, I struggle with that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. And Dustin, you're two this time.
Okay. I think Tony makes a great point about that. And going back to your question about how it would be funded if we were able to go that route, if we were collectively able to come to an agreement on it. I don't know exactly where the budget's at. I'm not looking at the breakdown at this point, being able to see it, because I'm not a commissioner, but I'm just assuming that there probably is areas in the budget where we could, evaluate what's not being utilized and see if we were able to allot some funds somewhere else. Also, I think it's a huge issue that we have parts of the county down south, for example, and up north that go uncovered due to being out of district. And seeing if we could possibly talk with Jefferson County and Clallam County and looking at expanding that district possibly and bringing in more tax revenue to us without raising the tax overall. I think that would be huge. The ambulance has mutual aid contracts. Why is the department not able to do that? I'm not sure.
We do have mutual aid contracts with Jefferson County.
Okay, perfect. But am I wrong on that, Tony? There's some uncovered area down there.
We're gonna.
Okay.
So we don't have dialogues between the two folks.
Sorry. But I just assume that Tony probably has some more insight on that because he is commissioner.
I do, which is unfair in a sense.
Yeah, but I think that's something we could look into for sure. So.
So Dustin, your time is up, and we'll get into some dialogue for you soon. So Neris, you have a minute.
Yeah. So I think I would lean towards not a stipend. Again, a great place to ask questions and investigate the issues. I have a hard time imagining that, firefighting has always been a volunteer organization for a very long time. I have a hard time imagining that a $50 per stipend or something is gonna move the needle in terms of whether a young volunteer is moving out of town or changing in their involvement. So in terms of retaining that talent and that volunteer pool, it's certainly something that needs to be investigated. Is it a stipend? I kind of doubt it. What is it? Is it better training? Is it community involvement? Is it, what could it be? You guys have any good ideas? I mean, that's, let's hear it. This is our fire district, right?
Okay, other questions?
Excuse
Yes,
me,
ma'am.
excuse me, Jodie just got here, so.
Oh, okay.
If we want to let her sit down.
All right. Nope, that's not there. Okay.
Just one.
All right. Okay, so before we're going to come and get your question in just a moment.
I don't have a question, I have a statement. It has to be made.
Okay, well, just a minute, though.
Okay.
We're going to allow Jodie to introduce herself. 2 minutes, just to introduce yourself and what your goals are, and then we'll go back to questions.
My name is Jodie Riker. I'm running for District 1, Seat 1. The reason that I'm running is because when I moved out here to Beaver, the first thing that happened was my fire insurance quadrupled. And considering that I came from a rather large city and I had less fire protection than I do out here, I was surprised. Another reason that I'm running is because my family is a military family. And I've been taught by my grandmother and my great-grandmother that you give back to the community of which you live. It's a requirement by my family standards. And I've driven an ambulance for 30 years. I've worked a wildland fire. I've also been a volunteer firefighter in rural communities out of rural metro. And I think that it's important that we acknowledge our firefighters in so many different ways, making sure the equipment that they have is going to get them home, safe to our families. And I know what that's like because there's been a couple of times that I wound up in ICU because somebody came across the center line and hit my truck head on. I know how important it is to keep our family ties here. I also understand how important it is, if we do nothing else, to make sure that our firefighters are acknowledged in some small way, because a lot of times they have to leave a job in order to respond to our fire department's calls. So with that, I'm going to cut it off and say thank you for letting me be here today, and to the League of Women Voters for all of the efforts they put out to have us here. Thank you. Jodie Riker, District 1.
Okay, thank you. We're back to audience questions.
My name is Patty Birch, and I'm currently a hospital commissioner. And I have to correct what Dustin said. We are not in the red. The hospital is in the black, and we work damn hard to keep it there.
Oh, I was saying we were in the black and we want to keep it there. And
But you said in the red.
no, I'm saying we're in the black, and I'm stating that we're not in the red and we want to keep it out of the red. That we're, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Any other, thank you for the correction. Any other questions? Okay, yes, ma'am.
What would the resolution of the,
Your name?
Christy Marion. What would the resolution to the timber arrearage issue mean to your getting new equipment and whatnot for the fire department and the ambulance? Would that have an impact if that was to be resolved?
Okay, so the order we're going to go in is we're going to do Jodie, Dustin, let me see. Jodie, Dustin, and Tony and Neris. Okay. Okay, so Jodie.
I can only attest to what I've heard from the Fire Commission. I've been going to the meetings since May. I didn't know where they were before, but I understand that our rearages are about $70,000. That could replace a lot of equipment. That could also help us financially through the next few years when things are going to get tighter, because grants are not as available. Does that answer the question for you?
Okay, Dustin, you're next.
When it comes down to that, is it gonna affect the department? Very much so, it will. But we can only do what we can do as commissioners, and so what that means is that's another obstacle for us, it's another problem to solve, and that's why we're here. Grants and stuff do become tight, and our government has changed, and that just means that when we look for other grants, we need to fight harder for that, and we need to see our budgets, the parts that aren't utilized possibly, and that's where it comes to reviewing a budget and rewriting the budget if it comes down to that. And I think that we need to very much so look at more grants that we can be applying for. We're a rural community, there's tons out there, and there's equipment grants that get us equipment instead of just funding, to be able to budget. So we've got to look at all of that.
Thank you. Tony, you're next.
The rearage issue is something the commissioners are dealing with right now. There's been a few meetings where the chairman's had, and it would make a substantial difference in our budgets with the fire district.
Neris?
Mine's just kind of the same. It's, the money has to come from somewhere without raising taxes. It's either grants or the funding that was allocated here is not getting here through that arrearage issue. Absolutely would make a difference. We need to fight for it together with the port, together with the city, together with the whole West End, the counties. It's a big deal.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Katie,
Your name?
Katie Kruger, City of Forks. I was just wondering, because I'm hearing grants mentioned now, and I know governments don't usually have access to foundation grants. Is there a sister 501c3 by which you might have an avenue through foundation funding?
Okay. And this, we're going to do Dustin, Tony, Neris, and then Jodie.
It might be a yes or no.
I can't speak on the department for that part. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. But it's something that could be looked into. We could, it's easy enough to start. We do it with the ambulance for 501c to be able to accept monies and stuff like that. It's definitely a great idea. It's an option to bring up. It's something we could look into for sure. I know there is other avenues, but you're right, there's a lot of grants out there that are specific to 501c's. It's something that we could look into for sure.
Tony, you're next.
I don't really know the answer to that either. But I do know, what a lot of people don't realize, the fire district is, people I talk to, there's some misperceptions. They think it's a Clallam County Fire Department. It is not. It's our fire department. We are a standalone entity. The only thing is the Clallam County Treasurer manages how the monies are spent and make sure it's done in a proper fashion. But Fire District 1 is us. It's not a county entity.
And Neris?
Yeah, I can't speak to the technicalities of grant applications, so I don't have an answer for that, but I look forward to figuring it out.
Jodie?
I have looked into it, and there are a lot of grants that are available. Now, whether or not we qualify for them, I'm not sure. I'm not in the fire department deep enough to know what our strengths and our weaknesses are. But I have looked into it, and I know that several districts locally have gotten as much as $1.5 million. I think it was District 3 or District 2, I can't remember. You'll have to forgive me, it's been a while since I looked it up. But there are grants out there through FEMA and Homeland Security, and the U.S., I think it's the Firefighters Association, has grants that are available. We can also go through GSA and acquire used equipment that has been lightly used. Not a lot of hours and not a lot of mileage. So there is equipment and there are grants available. It's just having somebody that's willing to dig down and find out what's available for us.
Any other questions? We're down to like the last question or two. Okay. So we will wrap up and ask each of you to give a 2-minute summary, and I'm going to make a special request that in your 2 minutes, if you can encompass one simple statement about what you think the public needs to know about your fire district. They're not really well understood, so in your 2-minute summary, if you just give one little factoid that the public can carry away with them. So I'll give you a minute to think about that, because Tony looks like he's thinking hard. And I threw that out, so if you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but it's
I'm
just,
just hiding it, I guess.
I just know that fire districts are not really well understood by the general public, so you've been in it for a long time. So Tony, we'll let you start with your 2 minutes, and if you want to answer that, fine. If not, just do your 2-minute summary as you
Yeah,
finish.
I'll start with that, I guess.
Okay.
I think a lot of things people don't realize is how tight the budgets are and how hard, I've watched lots of commissioners and fire chiefs and other firefighters, how hard people work at being frugal with the resources that we have. I do know that at the commissioner's level, the thought of any tax increases are far, far, far from anyone's minds. We are going to figure out how to operate the best way we are. And by the way, too, I don't really understand why Jodie's insurance went up so much, because Fire District 1 has the highest rating that a volunteer fire department can acquire. We are highly accredited. Maybe it's going from a municipal department to a rural department. I don't know what the answer to that is. But we can't acquire any higher rating than we already have, and that's a serious concern of mine to maintain that. But I have a lot of experience as a firefighter. I think I can represent the concern for the firefighters. I own quite a bit of property in Clallam County too, so fiscal responsibility is a great concern of mine. So with that said, I will do my best should I be elected.
Thank you. So Neris, you're next.
So, I mean, what strikes me about the fire district is everybody except the chief is a volunteer.
Sure, correct.
And you know, the fire department is one of those phone calls you hope you never have to make. But boy, is everybody excited when they show up. You know, and I think to remember that these are volunteers from our community. You know, there's one sitting in the back, there's one sitting right here. These are the guys that show up, guys and gals, that show up to look out for you. You know, we're looking to volunteer, we're looking to give back to the community. As firefighters are looking to give back to the community to protect each other. It's not a factoid, but it's one of those things that is good to be reminded of, that we're looking out for each other. I'm the new guy here. You know,
I'm the old guy.
Tony's got my opponent has a lot of experience, and you know, either way you vote, you're going to get a top-notch commissioner. So I'm really encouraged by that. So please vote. Get everyone else to vote that you can get to vote. Thank you.
Okay. And Jodie, you're next.
Okay. In my 2-minute summation, one of the things that was asked is that we bring some information that the public may not be aware of. There are some agencies in our cities that are not paying their fair share of the fire fees. They have not paid them for several years, from what I understand. And we may need to go to court to get those fees from them. And I'm not talking about timber fees. I'm talking about businesses that are operating in this city that have not paid their fees. And to me, that's very important, that those fees are paid, because that's how we operate. Now, I've worked with nonprofits before, and I've done grant writing for some. I'm not saying, you know, I should get this position because I know about grants. But I think I understand a budget fairly well to be able to get us on top of things. I can't promise you the top of the line fire department like they have in New York. But what I can promise you is that I will do everything that I can with the commissioners to make sure that we have the best we can have. And I hope Tony's right, because I'm really ticked about my increased rate on my fire insurance. I went from $10 a month to over $45 a month. And the fire department's a lot closer too. So anyway, I want to thank you for you all being here, because it's important that you participate in the government. And my name is Jodie Riker, and I'm running for position 1 in District 1.
Okay, and Dustin.
All right. So basically for me, what it comes down to is I really care for this community. I want to serve in the way that I can. I believe that the best way for me to serve is by being elected commissioner. I went to school. I've left our community after graduating. I've went to school and I'm continuing to go to school in this line of work. I continue to volunteer here recently with my paramedic certification. And we have a lot of issues that, you know, within the community that I don't think are huge issues, that should be huge issues. I think we can fix them. I know the people in the community, I know the needs and, you know, how we operate for the most part. And I think that, you know, coming together and continuing to work and retain volunteers is very important. And that's basically what it comes down to. And, you know, if they're, Jodie mentioned, you know, some businesses that possibly aren't paying their fair share. I don't know, maybe that's something we can look at and talk to them about it, but she mentioned taking them to court. I don't think that's very appropriate. I think that doesn't support our community as a whole, and I think we need to really focus on continuing to build that support. We're a small community, that's what we've always done. You know, I know that we're all in it together. And that's what it's all about. And, you know, Tony here's got tons of experience at the fire department, and he seemed a little baffled about the 501c question. And you know what? I'm baffled at some questions that he could probably answer, and that's what the Board of Commissioners does. We've got 5 people there. I might be able to bring some of the, you know, things to the table with the, you know, understanding more of the business side of things when it comes to the taxes and the 501c's and stuff, things I'm going to school for. And Tony's got all of his experience that he brings, you know. And that's what it's all about, is coming together and putting your heads together and, you know, who's better at what to make it a better place. So, thank you guys all for coming today.
So we want to thank our participants. So I want to remind you that this is not the end, it's just the beginning of conversation. So we're going to split up, and there are several candidates that were not at the front table, and are they going to be out by the fireside?
Well, it depends on what you're running for. If I can remember what Teresa said, I remember that fire people are by the fireplace.
Yes.
That one was easy.
Yes.
Port is in this room here.
Right.
And
they were going to have the mayor here, but then we have several candidates that did not participate that people have a chance to.
That's right.
They can
right, and they can roam. They can roam through, and then I have little name things for all of you. I didn't know who was going to show up because I didn't ask for RSVP on that. So.